Yeah, or they can take the advice that I've constantly given on the show, which myself, is that 5 to 9 is an opportunity to make money,
Yeah.
and it is something that should be taken seriously.
Mm-hmm.
I know that runs afoul of traditional American notions that people say, I don't want to work 2 jobs or I don't want to have second sources of income. And I typically say to those people, like, I get it. I understand you want this life-work balance. I do too. But at the same time, I also want the freedoms that comes along with not being tied to one source of income.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying you can't be a dedicated, full-time, great employee, but you can also do something you're passionate about. Instead of having a hobby that doesn't pay you, have a hobby that pays you.
Yeah.
It's not terrible advice.
Right.
So let's move on. We're going to talk more about the impacts to your wallet and mine. This is from the Kobeissi Letter. Lower income households are experiencing higher inflation. If it wasn't bad enough that inflation has already been, as we described, now you know that the bottom 40% of households by income are now experiencing inflation that is 25 basis points higher than the national average, according to the Fed study.
Yeah, and that 25 basis points, albeit may not seem like a lot, that's 0.25%. I mean, you got to think for lower income households, like every last dollar counts.
So in 2022, these households saw inflation that was 50 basis points above the national average. This is primarily due to housing and food accounting for a larger share of their expenses.
Mm.
So I'm going to finish this, but I'm going to clarify. And it's sad. It's really sad stuff. Meanwhile, the top 20% of households by income have been experiencing lower inflation than the national average since about 2021. Basic necessities have never been more expensive, and that's the problem. Food and shelter. People are spending more money because we have a home affordability crisis. Whether you rent or you buy, that's a fact.
Mm-hmm.
Can't debate me on that. That's a fact. That's a fact.
Yep.
Okay? Your food prices have gone up. That's a fact. They've gone up way higher than this number we throw out as inflation. Oh, inflation, Chris, it's only 5%. It's only 2 and some percent. It's only below 3%.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, on average. But guess what? To get us here, we lived through 9%. We lived through 5%. We lived through 10%. And the real inflation for some of these things was 25%.
The real inflation.
And I believe that food costs you 25% more today than it did literally 2 years ago.
I believe that too.
And I don't think there's been any remediation to this. Like, nobody's gone like, oh, okay, well, let's fix the food price. Like, they fix food prices. They just give you shittier quality food.
That I was just gonna say that. Like, we actually show our kids, like, look, we spend a little bit more for healthier things. We just want you to see the difference. And Arya is a little too young.
A little too young, yeah.
She's too, but Adam gets it. He sees it, and he's blown away by it.
Was he 8 now?
Yeah. He's 8.5. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's about the age where like light bulbs start going on, and like you're putting all the pieces of life together, and you start going like, wait a minute,
right?
Shenanigans.
Yeah.
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 So again, food for thought. Core inflation categories such as housing and service can account for up to 60% of the consumer price index. So if these numbers are so out of line and they account for 60%, you have to think about it in the context of, are we even going to hit the 2% target rate? And the answer we've said on the show historically is no, we're just not going to get there. And the Fed essentially gave up on it.
It's fabricated. If they do, I don't believe it.
This makes inflation harder to control even when other sectors like energy stabilize or decline. So meanwhile, it now takes 46% of the average American's income to cover mortgage payments. So approximately 50% of the average American's income goes towards just their shelter costs.
Mm-hmm.
Half.
Yeah.
A level not seen since the 2008 financial crisis. Compare this to the 30% benchmark that financial advisors, i.e. Dave Ramsey of the world, typically tell you to target.